Good evening. I'm Larry Gross. I'm the director of the School of Communication here, and I'm really delighted to welcome you all to the final, I should say, culminating event of this year's World Press Photo visit to the Annenberg School at USC. This is the second year that we've been honored by the presence of the World Press Photo exhibit. I think I should acknowledge that Karen Davies, who's here, was the person behind this thing for reasons that you may know and you may find out about, but she had her own special reason why she thought that the World Press Photo belonged here, but it wasn't a hard sell. It was really very easy for us at the Annenberg School to realize what a terrific opportunity this was for all of us. Just to let you know, if you don't already know, the Annenberg School is a complicated organism. It has a school of communication, that's the one I represent here, and a school of journalism. And both of the schools have a great and really important interest in the visual image, in the role of the visual image in history, in culture, and in particular, the powerful role of the visual image in journalism, in informing, educating, and bringing to people all around the world the images of the events that are occurring today. And I don't think this is an audience that needs to be persuaded of the power and the importance of photojournalism. But I think it is important for us to acknowledge how grateful we are to have the opportunity to have the World Press Photo visit us and allow us to use it as a laboratory for teaching, for events like this, for other opportunities to demonstrate to students and other members of the community. And those of us who are here have witnessed it firsthand over the last few weeks, the traffic of students, of faculty, of members of the community who have come through, and walking through the lobby day after day and watching people, listening to them and seeing them has demonstrated to us how terrific an opportunity this is and how valuable it is and how appropriate it is for a university, for a school to play this role. So we're delighted, and we're particularly delighted today to have come join us so many of the photographers whose work is represented to talk about it. That's actually what we do in schools. We talk about things. So this is really a perfect event for us. I'd like to take the opportunity here before we begin the event to thank the people who've made this possible. I'd like to thank TNT and ask David Gianelli, who's here from TNT, to stand up so we can thank and acknowledge the organization. I'd like to thank Canon, but I don't think there's anybody here who can stand up, so thank Canon. The next time you're shopping for a photo instrument, keep Canon in mind. And I'd like to thank the Los Angeles Times, who has an obvious relevance and role and importance for all of us in Los Angeles and certainly in the domain of photojournalism. I don't know whether Rick Meyer is here. I think is Rick here? I thought he was going to be here, but Rick Meyer is, I don't know. Rick Meyer is a member of our faculty as well and someone whom we appreciate. But I'd like to recognize Chris Strudwick Turner, who represents the LA Times here and whose sponsorship we're very grateful for. As she knows, and I think many of you know, we have many relationships with the LA Times. It's our hometown paper, of course. And in particular, we have to thank Getty Images, who are really the key players in this, and I'd like to give special thanks to Peggy Willett. Come on, Peggy, stand up. Who played a critical role in organizing tonight's event, in corralling our talent and making sure they're all sitting here in the front row and ready. And I'd like to acknowledge that we're really delighted that we're hoping to be able to join again with Getty and bring the World Press Photo exhibit here again next year. So by the time you've done it 3 years, it's a given, it's a habit, it's permanent. It's a deal. You know, we're ready. The format of the evening is, I think, rather simple, and it's exactly what you came for. Each photographer will discuss their work, and there'll be a brief opportunity for discussion after each one. It won't be, remember that question till afterwards, but we'll try and move this through smoothly, and the person on whose shoulders that responsibility falls is Pancho Bernasconi, the Getty Images Director of Photography News. Before joining Getty Images in 2004 from Corbis, and previously he was national photo editor at the New York Times. He was there at the time when they received a well-deserved Pulitzer Prize for the paper's coverage of 9/11. And before that, he had many other illustrious roles in photojournalism, but time is short, and I would rather turn the microphone over to Pancho, who will be your MC.
Larry, thank you. Thank you to the USC School of Journalism Communications, to Annenberg. To his point about Karen, real quick, Jean-Marc Beaujeu, Karen's husband, was a 2004 winner of the World Press Photo of the Year, so a big round of applause to him. Thank you all for coming. Getty Images believes in the power of an image and its ability to change lives and enable understanding. So we feel very fortunate tonight to be able to bring together 6 remarkable photojournalists who will share their stories behind their work. Let's start with Kristen Ashburn, who won first place for singles in the category of People in the News. Kristen is a documentary photographer based in New York City. Professional photography career began in 2001 with the first of several self-financed trips to Zimbabwe to document the effects of HIV/AIDS. In addition, she is one of the directors of Through the Eyes of Children, the Rwanda Project, a charity that teaches photography to Rwandan orphans and supports them through the sales of their images. Kristen? You work there.
I'm not sure you can see the image. Okay, I think that's better. Hi, I'm Kristen Ashburn. I produced this image while I was working on a project for the World Press Masterclass. And I had been working on a project prior to getting that assignment where I was interviewing and photographing people who were parts of various groups, militant groups in Gaza. And I wanted to understand what their mindset was in wanting to go on suicide missions. So after photographing them, I then was part of the World Press Masterclass, and I wanted to understand how this warfare tactic impacted the larger Palestinian society. I wanted to understand how children were viewing this, as I said, this warfare tactic. And so for the masterclass, I went back and examined how children sort of dealing with the Intifada. And what I found is that regardless of whether people were going on suicide missions or were dying in street conflicts with the Israeli Defense Force or were innocent bystanders, that the idea of a shaheed, which is a martyr in the Palestinian society, was glorified. On every street corner you would see posters of people who had completed missions or who had been killed, and that was really the sort of the basis of the project. This image is of a young boy, Muhammad, who, when the IDF had come into the northern part of Gaza, they were under a curfew. This community was under a curfew. And after about a week of this, he had asked his mother, had said, can you prepare me lunch? And she said, sure, but why don't you check out to see if your aunt has potatoes and then come back with him. So he went upstairs to his room and he wanted to see where the tanks were that were surrounding the neighborhood. and he put his head out the window, and he was hit by an Israeli sniper and was killed instantly. So this is a very simple portrait of a victim of this intifada, but as I say, I think of this sort of a cycle of violence and the way in which that death is glorified, as well as the way that sort of the intifada is fueled, that this picture is very symbolic. Are there any questions?
What's the most subject?
The category that it won in was singles, people in the news, which is actually kind of ironic because, in fact, people die almost not every day, but frequently in Gaza, and it barely makes the news anymore. On both sides, of course, but in particular, this image, I found it hard-pressed. I Googled it, and with the exception of a Reuters sort of comment on the killing, there was really nothing reported on it. So singles people in the news is kind of interesting because the fact is that his death didn't really make news.
How hard was it to get to the morgue, I guess is where he is, to make that photograph? Was that a difficult thing to negotiate?
During the week, I had been working with one specific hospital where I was riding in an ambulance every day to the point where teenagers were clashing with the IDF and tanks. And every day there were casualties as well as wounded. There were probably, I think there were 3 kids that were killed that week, and then a lot of serious injuries. So we would go every day and kind of hang out in the area to ferry these kids back and forth to the hospital. So I had, the staff, the hospital staff knew me, and, I had pretty much free reign to, not only be in the ambulance to photograph people coming in, and then, those who were dead would be put into the morgue. So I had heard of the shooting and went with the ambulance to collect the body, went to the hospital and photographed him there, and then went to the funeral. And as I say, this is part of a broader body of work where I was examining how the cycle of violence was affecting all, sort of age groups of people in Gaza. I don't know who wants to call in questions. Yes?
How many photos of him did you take?
I think that, it wasn't sort of like it was a sort of it looks very posed, I think, and very exact, but it was probably maybe 4 frames. It's a very odd experience to, go into, there was a very small room to go in, and, they pulled the body out. And I actually didn't want to take this picture, honestly, but once we got to the hospital, they said, do you want to go and, into the morgue, and, and it seemed really kind of strange at some point but at the same time it was this frozen moment, this very quiet moment. He's 22 years old. It's like at a moment where he should be, starting his life. And he's, in the morgue. And, the way in which this thing was wrapped around him is, they didn't cover his face, and it wasn't sort of posed in that sense. It was just sort of the guy came in and opened the door, and I think there was a chair on the side, and I stood on it because I shoot with a rollie, and I needed to sort of be at this right spot. So there was a little bit of, maneuvering, and just sort of one of many images that were taken during that summer.
Yeah. Did you have an interpreter?
Yes. Yeah, I work with a fixer, a person who, really that pretty much sort of gets me in and out of situations, and I trust, implicitly with.
Why didn't you want to take the photograph?
Why didn't I?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was so hot, quite honestly, and I'd spent the day in the ambulance, and it was just sort of like, You know, I didn't really know why I would want to take the picture. And it's sort of how pictures take on their own life afterwards, and they become symbolic, and it's something that, you know, for me, of course, I see the power in, you know, in this very quiet moment.
Did he become a martyr in the sense that his...
Yes, very much so.
He got his poster and...
Yeah, well, yeah. It's, you know, an unfortunate situation where those who, you know, those who are killed, in order to continue with this sort of cycle of violence, I think that many people, you know, of course you can't generalize, but in many ways, to continue with the conflict, you have to have belief, and that, you know, within Islamic belief, it's that if you are killed by your oppressor, that Allah rewards you in paradise, and, you know, very much that's part of the idea that you can, that hopefully that their deaths are not in vain.
So who from the family did you obtain permission to actually take this picture?
His whole family.
His whole family?
Yeah. They wanted to show that he had been killed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Jonathan Ferry won third place singles in the category of sports action. While studying at UCLA, Jonathan joined Allsport, which later became part of Getty Images. He started as a refiler working in the library. He worked his way up to photographer and has been a staff photographer for the last 8 years, working out of Portland, Oregon. Please welcome Jonathan.
Hi. Being a graduate of UCLA, I thought I would never say this, but thanks USC for hosting this event. The World Press events are all really great. They really celebrate photography, and any chance you can get to go do it, because it's really fun. This photo specifically, I wish I could stand up here and say it was, you know, this vision I had of a nice, bold, graphic image, but the reality is my flash didn't go off. It was supposed to be in color, and originally it was horizontal as well. So, but it was, you know, and I think as sports photographers, but photographers in general, I think you can miss and lose a lot of really nice pictures because of bad luck. Something can get in your background or block your angle, the light goes, whatever it might be. But when you know, the image I had in mind was a, you know, little a rear curtain sync on my flash, and, you know, a little slow speed going by. And these are triathletes who are running out of the water at the Olympic trials in Bellingham, Washington in 2004. But it clearly didn't happen the way I envisioned it, but the result, I think, is better than what I originally thought. So, you know, with a little good luck, and I think, you know, most photographers who experience good luck will take it any day they can. The picture worked out, I'm pretty happy with it. I don't know if when I originally showed it to my editor, he's actually in the room, but I won't pull him out. He wasn't super pleased. He thought, that's all right, but...
You can point them out.
It's just one of those moments where what you envision doesn't happen, but what results is sometimes better. So it's, you know, I'm happy with it in the end. So if you have any questions,
John.
don't ask how to shoot with a flash, because I probably. Well, I think like a perfect example for a sports photographer, like say you're at a golf tournament and there's TV coverage. Well, you'll have like a great picture, Tiger Woods, and he's about to hit the ball, and before you know it, the TV guy is right there in the background with the little guy holding the boom and the cables, and your picture is terrible. It's gone. So you know, you really don't even bother taking it sometimes. And there's just moments in sports where, like, say a football game, a referee comes between you and the action. Well, you miss it. You know, so it's a lot of just things out of your control that. Just make it difficult sometimes.
Thank you, Jonathan.
All right.
Chris Ann Johnson won second place singles in the category of daily life. Chris Ann received her MA in Visual Communications at Ohio University. After completing an internship with U.S. News and World Report, she joined the White House photo staff as a photographer assigned to cover the President and Mrs. Bush. She now resides in Brooklyn, where she is pursuing social documentary work. Please welcome Chris Ann Johnson.
Hello. This single is from a project I started in 2004 on the Old German Baptist. I started this project after meeting a woman in a campsite. Actually, I was photographing something else, and I was very intrigued by what I saw on the campsite, and I had kind of inquired about the community, and she told me that they were Old German Baptists. It was near my hometown in southern Ohio, so I was very interested to find out what the differences were. I presumed from the time I was about 6 that they were always Amish or Mennonites, so I was very surprised to find that they were actually the Old German Baptists, and they differ greatly in their beliefs and their culture. So I can maybe relate to Jonathan in a small way, but in grad school, this picture was actually edited out of my story. So I was very happy to find that it came back in, and I'm very fortunate for what's happened since, but I'm glad it stayed. And when I first started this project, I corresponded with the woman I met in the campsite for a couple of months. It was just a written correspondence back and forth, discussing their different religious beliefs, the difference in culture, and I finally asked if I could come and visit them. So I went out. I was also very determined at this time to find a story that I could do in my own backyard. I was watching everyone else in my class go to different states, different countries, and I thought, you know what, I have little money, I'm a grad student, there's got to be something next to me here that I can find to photograph, that I can live with these people and photograph them. And of course, this story's been done before, Amish and Mennonites. But knowing that they were Old German Baptists and knowing that they were somewhat different, I decided to go after it and to see what they were about and try to discover it on my own. And also at this time, I was very interested in seeing how I could push myself as a photographer and grow and gain access and just test my own limits. So I went to live with them for about 2 weeks. This particular image is from a family that belongs to the Old Order. There's only 500 left in the Old Order. They don't use electricity, they don't use cars. And so I went to live with them for a week, and it was very interesting. And after this day, we had started the morning in a buggy ride to a church, and I wasn't allowed to photograph in the church, just outside. So it was a very peaceful experience as well, just being in the church and listening. They sing everything a cappella, and you know, this entire experience was beautiful. And at the end of the day, we went and joined about 5 families at a home where we had a very big dinner. And after the dinner, everyone in the family, unless it was wives with children and they were cleaning up, go out and play some sort of a sport. Sport's huge in this community because they don't have televisions, they don't have, you know, video games. All they do is play sports pretty much, or talk around a table. So I know maybe this should have been entered in a feature sports category, but I didn't see it. To be honest, I didn't see it that way because this is their culture. I mean, that's all they do is play sports, softball, ping pong. I mean, I cannot tell you how many hours I spent photographing softball and ping pong and basketball. And so this particular day, it was I chose this project also in the middle of winter, so I was always surprised that they went outside and played sports and it was freezing. And so I mean, the house was just around the corner, and I was in the barn photographing them playing basketball, and they're a very guarded community. It took me at least a month to get access to them, and once I gained their trust, I didn't photograph anything for a month. I just would go and talk to them and live in their home. Not live in their homes, I would visit because I could stay at my parents' while I visited, but it took a long time to build their trust, and once I did, it was always a very special moment. But this particular girl was always very guarded, and I had had a hard time all day photographing her, but I thought she was beautiful, and I really wanted to photograph her, but half the frames I have, she has her hands over her face and she's being very bashful and shy. So when I was in the barn, I realized that I was more in the way than being guarded. Like, they just wanted me out of the barn if I wasn't going to play. So I left the barn, and I realized, oh, well, they keep throwing the ball outside. Like, somebody keeps running after it. So I just decided to kind of perch myself in between the barn and the outdoors. And, I mean, to be honest, what I'm more attracted to in photography is moments, and especially unguarded moments. So I crouched probably down on the ground there for a good hour, and then I would stretch my legs, and then I would go back down. And when I look at this now, yes, I mean, everyone always comments on the composition and the buggy, but I didn't. I'd seen so many buggies that week, I hadn't really thought of the buggy. And I agree, it's nice, but I really didn't see it. So, so I was crouched down, and I just waited, and then sometimes a man would come and like crouch down next to me too. He was just, I don't know, talking to me or tired, and then they'd put their hats on the bikes. Like, to be honest, I think this is a person, because in the frame I cropped up just a little bit, but you can see his nose, so I think a man was actually crouched down at this time, but they'd also lay their hats on their bikes as well, which was right next to me. And I just waited, and finally I thought, oh, this girl may eventually come through, or maybe it'll be a boy, I don't know, but I was very excited that a moment may pass through my frame. And eventually it did, and so for me it was a very nice moment, and I was very happy that I caught this beautiful girl showing, I don't know, off her personality and herself, so that's how that goes. Any questions?
Has she seen the picture?
Yes, I would always bring prints because I just think it's nice for them to see, and I showed her the picture, and she just was like, well, you know, she's ran the other way. But I haven't told her that she won, so. I mean, when I did this project, I was in grad school, and I said, they had had a very bad experience with the newspaper, and I had actually worked at it for a while, but I told them this was just for my own project, and you know, I said, I'll come back to you if I'd ever like to publish it, but I said I was actually joking at the time, I said the only way it'll ever go in if it was in a contest or something, and so that was funny that it actually was, because I never told her, but I think I should tell her, but I'm going to go back soon. I think she'll actually be happy. Actually, the anniversary, the Old German Baptists they started in 1708 in a town of Schwarznow, Germany, and then they immigrated to the United States due to persecution and due to the Pietist movement. That's how they got involved. And their 300th anniversary is coming up, and I'm actually hoping to do a show in the town where they originated from. I've been talking with the museum curator there, so I'm hoping to do it for 2 more years and bring a show, and I think that she'll be excited if she knows that that's where it might be shown. And then I'll break it to her that it was shown. She looks good. Anything else? Yeah.
Two-part question. So the bottom left is a hat.
Yes.
And then second part is she wearing Air Jordans?
Yeah. I don't know what she's wearing, actually. She has to, due to the dress, it was difficult because I wear jeans, and tonight it was hard to put on black pants, but I had to wear a skirt the entire time I photographed this, a long skirt, so I noticed that they were much more trendy than I was because I was wearing nicer shoes, and they would just throw on their gym shoes with anything, and I don't know, I think it's just black because it fits with their dress code, so maybe I'll ask. Yes?
When you're trying to catch these moments, how long do you usually have to wait?
I don't know. Sometimes I was one of my favorite shots in this project is in a buggy, and I was with them all day, and then finally I just liked how he looked, and the horse passed, and it was nice. And with this one, I don't know. Sometimes I think people just get an idea that it maybe if you're patient, something's going to happen that makes photography great for me. And I think patience is probably what I've learned through this project was patience, and I'm glad I chose it because they were so guarded and it was so hard to get access. I had to be so patient for hours. Hours just to wait for any moment, like just anything. So for me, I waited a very long, probably an hour for this, but for other moments, I don't know, sometimes they come across in seconds. Sometimes.
I have 2 questions. One, how old is she?
How old is she? I don't know. I guess they can't go, she's not, I think she must be probably 14 or 15 because they're not allowed to attend high school after the 8th grade or 9th grade. So I know she was still in school. So women have to stop attending school, I think, in the 9th grade. So.
How did you know when it was okay to take pictures? I mean, did they give you a high sign, or did you?
No, they'll never
ask
do that.
permission?
They'll never say it's time. So you kind of, that's what I think, that's why I was glad I chose it, because I had to really learn when to push, and then I would say, Chrisanne, you're not pushing yourself enough. They're giving you access, just shoot. But after a month, the first month I just went and met with them in their homes, and I mean, honestly, I drove through a lot of back roads, and people would say, oh, I think an Ultra Baptist family lives there, and I'd just go knock on their door and try to explain who I was. Some people would say no immediately, and then I'd have one brother of a family that would say, come over to my house, let's talk. And then he would say, why don't you come back next week? And then I'd start bringing them photos, and I think that they just gained my trust, and then I would just, I'd just go at it. I mean, I think I probably held back a lot still. I think I'd like to continue it for a couple more years just to see how much more access I can gain and push myself. Maybe they were completely fine the entire time and I didn't know. I don't know. It's more about yourself, I think, sometimes than what they say. If they didn't want me there, they would have said go. So.
How aware are they of the outside world, and do they want to ever get away and experience it?
I think they're pretty much aware of the outside world. When I told them I was, going to DC for an internship at US News, they were very excited about kind of talking about politics. They were very big Bush supporters, very conservative, and so yes, they're pretty up to date. They definitely get the news. The old order does not read the newspaper, but somehow they definitely know about what's happening. So I think they finagle it sometimes. And I mean, they ride their buggies past. I don't know. I grew up it's in the countryside. It's very removed. If you didn't know certain streets, you would never know it was there. I mean, I would be lost out there sometimes, but they definitely go to Walmarts and go to certain things. I mean, they have to get goods from certain places. And a lot of the men actually they've been taken over by larger companies, their farms. So now they're actually working for people that aren't Ultraman Baptists, and they try to get their rights where they can pull their buggy up to the state, to the workforce and work there with some respect. So they're not unaware of it. And that's partly the reason I'd like to continue documenting them. There's only 500 left in the old order, and some in Mississippi. And I feel like it's near my hometown. It's very interesting because I don't think too many people have documented them. So I think it won't be around 20 years from now.
You live in New York, which is the the antithesis of this place. Do you ever long for the simple life of the old German Baptists?
Oh, of course
do you have
I
like
do.
a stressful
That's why
day?
I did this project. Every night I got to sleep in a quilt with a lantern. It was great. I mean, they basically tuck you in with hot milk. It was great. Yes, of course I would like to go back, but I mean, I can't make rent there forever, so I had to move to New York for a little bit. But yes, I do. I enjoyed the simple. I enjoyed photographing this for that purpose too. It was great.
Thank you. Our next photographer is Renee Jones, whose image won third-place singles for Sports Feature. Renee is a Minnesota-bred photographer who tried to leave the state but kept on getting good jobs. She graduated from St. Olaf College in 2001 with a degree in studio art and started working at the Owanta People's Press with a daily circulation of 8,000. Today, she's a staff photographer at the Star Tribune, whose assignments vary from hard news stories like the Red Lake, Minnesota shootings, to following around VIPs in the bustling Twin Cities nightlife scene. Please welcome Renee.
Actually, there's two things that really pleased me about this photo, and it being included in the World Press competition, and that is the first one, that it always gets a little reaction when people see it. But the second part of this photo that really makes me happy is that it's very simple in its nature. I was working for a weekly suburban newspaper when I photographed it, and it was an assignment that fell through. I was working on a Saturday, and we had a sewing meet that was non-existent when we got there, and so we ended up just going next door to this wrestling meet. And it was really visual. I don't know if you've ever been to a youth wrestling meet, but they're so dramatic. It was a first for me, even though in Minnesota wrestling is actually pretty big. But children are so passionate about winning, and their parents are at the edge of the mat pounding with blood veins coming out of their necks. And so it was just full of visual, dramatic photos. So I spent a good portion of my Saturday morning there just trying to get something for this sports page. And this, like Chris Ann's picture, is a product of patience to me. When you're shooting a lot, you find a picture and you're like, oh, I think especially with digital, oh, I got a picture, I can go home now. But there's always that little obsession that a photographer has, that if you stay another 15 minutes, it might get a little better. And so that's actually what I felt this day. And this was the last photo I took. I was leaving and I noticed they were having a little awards platform, kind of, obviously a little podium like the Olympics, and they were getting their photos taken, and little Jimmy was not apologetic about his fourth place, his feelings for his fourth place win. And so all I did is I just got under a table where the photographer had set up all the pictures, and I took a couple frames, and it actually captured that moment. It was short, but a lot of people saw it. There was a lot of people standing around, and his family was really, I was afraid his parents were going to not give me his name and say, oh, you can't put his picture in the newspaper. He was devastated, but they were really, they were supportive. They thought it was funny, and we all, we all know that his pain is temporary. He's over it, and in a sense, it's kind of rewarding because he's the loser made the front page for the sports page. But that's really the background to the photo. If you have some questions, I can tell you.
I've got a question for you. How often in doing daily newspaper work do you come across situations like this? Is that rare? Do you have to really work hard? Like you said, you have to wait. You could have left, but you didn't. Is that a struggle to do that every day?
It feels like it gets more and more rare the longer I've been photographing for 4 years. But maybe it's just your standards get a little higher. But it feels kind of rare. I don't think I've had since this was, it was the beginning of 2004 when I took this, like January 3rd. So it was actually a long time ago. But I don't think I've taken a picture that has that kind of reaction since. So it is kind of far and few between. Yes?
I'm just curious if you think it's easier to photograph children as opposed to adults.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. Yeah, I think it is. Sometimes it's less, you're less intimidated, I guess, in a way sometimes, maybe when you're photographing children. If that was a big, huge wrestler and he was mad, I might be a little less interested in putting his picture in the paper.
Hi, did you crop that shot, or is that the way?
No, actually, I don't think there might be like a little hair on the left or something cropped, but not really. It was, their heads were gone.
Thank you. Our next photographer is Shaul Schwartz. Shaul won double honors for his work in Haiti. Shaul is also not here. He had to take a trip to Israel for an assignment. He regrets that he had to cancel, but he asked me to make a few comments about his work. I think we can talk about the first picture. Shaul says, I think my picture of the boy looting meat in Haiti became such an icon because it showed the true desperation that Haiti had sunk to, without showing the death and blood, but rather with showing only the strongest will of a young boy to live. It was an amazing moment, shot at the right time, and only by one photographer. And I can tell you, I was working at Corpus when Shaul was in Haiti, and he had been there for several weeks, and this was by the port in Port-au-Prince, and it was amazing to see this picture come across the wire, if you will, the wire, and to hear his reaction and to just exactly what he says in terms of the photographer feeling this boy struggling for this meat because it was the only way he was going to live was quite a powerful moment. He still talks about it with a lot of passion and a lot of heartache and sorrow for this little boy. So it was deserving of it won second place in the Spot News. The second photograph won third place in People in the News. And this is in the town of Gonaives, in a hospital, a makeshift morgue in a hospital in Gonaives. And Scholl says, "To me, this picture was again special because it showed the deep and sad situation that Haiti had sunk to. Again, without showing the horror up front, but rather by showing a moment of quiet grief and pain to a new mother who had just lost her baby. Just moments before making this photograph, I had taken a picture of a very graphic scene of the morgue where more than 40 corpses were piled around the room. Many of the corpses were very young children who had died when the hospital was evacuated as rioting began months before in the city of Gonaives. He says that after photographing this moment, he knew he could stop making pictures of the situation because he had made the photograph that mattered the most." So those are Scholl's comments. Our next photographer is David Swanson. David began his career with the Philadelphia Inquirer as a freelance suburban photo correspondent, and he joined the Inquirer full-time in 1997 and published a book called Water Music of Salmon, Sobs, and Spey Rods, which is about fly fishing for salmon in Norway. David has also covered conflicts in Croatia, Bosnia, and was in Iraq, embedded with the 2nd Battalion, 4th Marine Regiment, photographing the fighting in Ramadi. Please welcome David.
There's a lot of ways to start this story because I have a friend in the audience tonight that knew me from 20 years ago, and she knew I always wanted to be a war photographer. And what I ended up being was a newspaper photographer that would go to wars once a year, twice a year, and followed my path. And this photo is from April of 2004. And the bodies were hanging on the bridge on March 31st. And April Fool's Day, April 1, I finally got through to my lieutenant in our Ramadi, and he said, "Come on out," and I could be embedded with the 2nd Marine Division. And this photo was taken on April 10th. It's hard for me because this guy died 3 days later. April 6th, there was a firefight, and 12 Marines died with the company I was in. And I had a Thuraya, and I talked to Martha Raditz from well, I think it was NBC, and I talked to, well, I can't remember. I talked to a bunch of people, and they wanted to know what it was like to photograph all these Marines that were dying. And she wanted to know what it was like to photograph a Marine with a body bag on their shoulder. And it's a different photo. And that's the one I thought I would be famous for, you know. And I told her, you know, it's a body bag. I'm happy as a photographer to photograph it. But I want people to know what you are going to lose when you put people to war. Anyway, I had showed this young Marine, the photograph, the day after it was taken. His name's Eric Ion, and he's a private first class, and he thought it was kind of funny, all things considered. I could show him on newseum.org, and he could see the front pages it was on, and I think he laughed, and he was funny about it. But 3 days later, another IED exploded. He jumped out of a 7-ton truck, and it was the second IED that killed him. And I photographed the other Marines back at Combat Outpost reacting to his death. And that was it. I was with the captain, who I had dinner with 2 nights ago in Oxnard, California, and we talked for 5 hours about what happened that day. And, no shit, it's combat. Kids died. And whether you believe in the war or not, this is what happens. So I have no politics about the war, but I want people to know, you might lose some 18-year-olds. Anyways, questions?
Hi. You mentioned that that you had decided to do this 20 years prior to having done it, to being a war correspondent.
Yep.
And I know a lot of soldiers go over there and they never become heroes, but I mean, war correspondents in a sense do. So how much of that, how much of it was a desire for heroism? That's what I'm asking.
Again, it was April Fool's Day. March 31st was the bodies hanging on the bridge in Fallujah. My driver, Martez, put me in a kafia, found the dirtiest Mercedes station wagon we could find, and we drove the 3 hours from Baghdad to Ramadi. I don't think it's, what's the word, heroism? Heroism? It's more just, if I'm going to be over there, might as well do the job, There's a big difference between what the writers do and what the photographers do. I had to choose my battles. There was a lot of times I was criticized for not going out to cover something. And I'm like, F you, I'm the one that's got to be on the spot, You can go in and out in 2 seconds to write your story and get a byline. A photographer's got to be there for the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We have to be productive when we're there. So, in the blue shirt.
Have you been approached by his family?
He's dead.
Well, by his family.
His sister had emailed me a couple times. I sent him the photograph. I sent him obviously this photograph. There was a German photographer there with me, Maurizio Gambarini, for European Press Agency, and he photographed him coming in dead, and I just couldn't be bothered at the time. I just couldn't handle it when he came in dead. I photographed the guys reacting to his death. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, when this happened, okay, here's the real story. This is April 6th, 2004. There's a firefight that's going on for, I think, 5 or 6 hours. I think. And it's over. There's a couple Humvees at this intersection, and I'm looking at it, and the Army, these are Marines, the Army is pulling bodies out of this Humvee. Why I didn't photograph it, I have no idea. It's too far away. It's not a good photograph. But I don't know why I didn't photograph it just for the heck of it with a 300 that I had with me. I thought at the time it was Iraqis at the Humvee. Later that night, the captain said, yeah, we lost 12 guys that night. And I realized now, or I realized at the time, or later that night, that it was 12 Marines that died in that Humvee. This guy was just trying to get that thing started. And I had asked him at the time, can you get me back to combat outpost so I can file? And he said, oh, it's going to be a while. And it was a while. And literally, and I love this frame. I'm very proud of this frame. But literally, 10 frames later, I have a photograph of a Marine, Nathan Appel, carrying Travis Layfield in a body bag on his shoulder. And I thought that was going to be the frame I would be known for. And they laid Travis Layfield in the back of this Humvee, and they attached that Humvee to another Humvee, and in my mind surfed back to combat outpost about 4 miles, and sparks were flying from all the wheels that were gone. Got back and filed a photo. And I forget what you asked. What did you ask?
You answered your question.
Was there ever a time when you were, quote, in the shit, when you really started to rethink why you even went over there?
By the way, this is Dana, and this is my girlfriend from 20 years ago.
I was actually...
Who said I was too big of a target before I got shot.
About 20 years ago, we were in photo school together, and he had all these books of these famous war photographers, and David's a very feeling guy, and those were the images that really always spoke to him in college. And he always taught, and at the time, thankfully, we weren't at war. And he always, not that he wanted a war to break out so he could go and actually cover the war, but he talked about it, and I said, you're kind of a big guy. You're going to make a pretty big target, and you're not the most graceful guy on the planet, and you smoke like a chimney, so good luck running. But, and so you can imagine I was actually, I was really concerned and saddened when he actually got winged. He got shot. He took a little bullet in the, where was that, under your arm? He got shot in a firefight, and now we can laugh about it because he's fine, but I felt horrible because that's kind of what I always thought was going to happen to him. And it did. So yeah, so I, as a person that knows you, I always wonder, what the hell? Why do you go out and you put yourself, with nothing but a camera in these crazy situations?
I had, how stupid it sounds, but I had parents that saved newspaper covers of the Kennedy assassination and Life magazines and blah, blah, blah. And that's how we know all we know about things. F it. It's the way we know things. So.
It doesn't really answer David, but okay.
Thank you, David. I think what you said is truer than you probably believe. That's how we know what we know about things. You got to write that one down. Our last photographer is Donald Morale, who won second place stories for the category of sports action. After competing as an All-American swimmer and completing a BA in Fine Arts at UCLA, Donald became a photographer for All Sport, which later became Getty. 8 years later, he's covered sporting events around the world and is preparing to leave for Turin in a week or so for the next Winter Olympics. Please welcome Donald.
I hate going last, and somehow the order got switched, so I'm going last. I think it's because I have a story. It's tough acts to follow here, all really unbelievable photographs and photographers, so I'll try to go quickly and do a quick anecdote for each photo. This is a start photo from swimming, and I just figured it looked good at the beginning of the portfolio because it's a start picture. This photo it was kind of a risk I took. I set up the camera hours beforehand. I had to pre-focus it, kind of guess where the competitor was going to dive into the water, and got lucky. I think it was 1 of 2 photos I got that morning, and worked out. So the guy on the left didn't get hurt. He's all right. He actually ended up winning the match, and just classic example of preparation meeting luck. I just was in the right place, just lined up perfectly. I remember hearing the guys to the right, the photographers to the right and the left of me, like looking at their LCD screen on their camera, going, "Oh, bummer." I was like, "Nice." This was a pretty cool position at the track and field. To get to this position, you had to crawl through this metal tube with all your camera gear. You had a little light on your helmet. You had a couple ladders, and the next thing you know, after about 10 minutes of walking, you're a couple hundred feet over the Olympic Stadium. I remember one of the guys I went with the first time started puking, and that was a lot of fun. So this was a situation where I just saw this strip of light kind of making its way across the track, and said to myself, "Oh, I'll take a risk. I'll just expose for the full light." And luckily, I got the girl off the ground and the shadow going all the way across. And if I didn't get this, my photo editor would probably be like, "All your pictures are dark. You can't see the runners." Luckily, it worked out. Rowing at the Olympics, those of you who've gone to rowing events, you have to get there way early. It's really brutal. Like, you have to get there at 6 a.m. And I took this shot, I think the night before I was at a swimming final or track final, and I didn't sleep. I just got back to my room about like 3 a.m. and I had to get up and leave at 4 a.m. So I just stayed up. I think I had like a Red Bull or a coffee or something like that. And sitting there like grinding my teeth like, okay, get a rowing picture and get back and sleep. And it worked out. This was actually a day off. This is like, I think, the first couple of days of the Olympics. I wanted to go out and do a feature. So I decided to call the U.S. synchro team, and I called their PR girl, and was just like, "Hey, do you mind if I get in the water with the team?" And they said, "Sure, yeah." "Do you know how to swim?" I said, "Yeah." So showed up and had my little nose plug, little goggles, and I get in the water. I didn't realize this, but one of the U.S. girls, it was a big story. She was in a drunk driving accident, and so all these European photographers and U.S. photographers there taking pictures. And I'd like pop my head out every now and then, look around and be like, "Who the hell is that guy in the water?" I think they thought I was an alternate, like the girl in the bottom left. I was like the 10th alternate. This is one of my more favorite pictures of the Olympics because it's this position where you're actually kind of like, it's a given amount of time. You sign up for this little list, and you're allowed to go up in the catwalk for 5 minutes. And while you're up there, all the other photographers are like, "Come on, hurry up, it's my turn." And on top of that, you have I guess it's a photo marshal kind of tied to you. Because if you're up in the catwalk, for safety reasons, like, okay, if you fall, they're going to fall with you or something. So you're sitting there, you're tied to this guy, and the guy's like, "Okay, you got 1 minute left, 30 seconds, hurry up. And I'm just like, well, you know what, I'm just going to slow it way down, and I just slowed it down to, I think, 1/4 of a second, and it was like F16 and F4, and just wanted to kind of get the energy of ping pong. It's just one of those classic remote pictures. You go there hours beforehand, you set up a camera, and you hope you focused it in the right spot. Got it. Yeah, I think everyone who goes to kayaking events wants that picture of, the guy looking through the water, splashing around. This was like on the bubble, like when I was picking the 12 pictures, that picture was the one photo I was thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have it in there, but it was like an action shot. So this photo is from the same position as the other track shot, but directly above the Olympic rings. It's the 400-meter final, and actually the Americans ended up going 1, 2, 3 in it, and it's using a graphic of the Olympic rings. The rings are everywhere. Everywhere you look, there are rings everywhere. Yeah. Gail Devers, I think she started this trend of the nails thing for track athletes. And I remember being maybe, 30 or 40 yards down the way at the 100-meter hurdle. I think it was like finals or I think it's semifinals. And I'm sitting there and I see her nails. I'm like, oh, I gotta run and go get a picture of that. So I start running down. She's like getting ready, and I put my converter on the camera and I just squeeze one frame off, and it just kind of has this kind of, I don't know, it's like talons or animal kind of feeling to it. A little group hug. This is from the same day as the other fencing shot, and it was a comeback victory by, I think the French beat the Italians, and the Italians were up and they lost. So the French really rubbed it in. They were celebrating for like 20 minutes afterwards. And this is the last picture, and it was kind of, I feel like a good going away shot. It showed the symbol of the Athens Games, the little olive wreath, and this is a remote shot again. I got there a couple hours beforehand, focused frame to photo, and I'm down there shooting the girl on the left, kicking the girl on the right in the face, and then I had this camera upstairs, and I was like waiting for her to look up, and she finally looked up, and I shot the frame. So I don't think it would have worked if she didn't look up. So, and I think that's it. Yeah.
How many photographers put the cameras up above like you?
Anyone who gets there early. All you have to do is you get there, you talk to the, usually like in an event like the Olympics, you want to know the photo marshals for each venue. And first thing I did, like at the start of the week, is you look at the venues you're doing, and you hunt down that photo marshal and try to get them on the phone. And then just try to find out a time where you can get there and hang a remote up. And all it does is just kind of stretches out your workday a little bit, but anyone can do it. Yeah.
Do you have favorite sports?
What?
Do you have sports that you like more than others? Or?
I like swimming a lot because I swam for a while. I like surfing a lot. Yeah, swimming and surfing. There's a lot. I mean, any sport that's interesting. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of table tennis, but yeah.
How did you work your way up to shooting at the Olympics? Like, did you start when you were at UCLA?
No, I did not start when I was at UCLA. I actually answered an ad in the LA Times when it was about 6 months after I graduated, and it was this really just ambiguous ad that said, need photo editors, photographers, technicians for LA agency, and I called it up, and I walked in, and I was like, whoa, it's like a gnarly sports agency, right? There's all these great pictures on the wall. It was this office overlooking Pacific Palisades, like on the water. It was beautiful. I walk in there, and I have my art book from school. It's like this just a hodgepodge of pictures, this like out of focus stuff, and like, yeah, I want to be a photographer. They're like, oh yeah, we have a spot at the picture desk editor. You want? Oh yeah, I'll take it. And I took that job, and I worked there for pretty much almost a full 12 months. But what I do is that I was at the desk for 5 days a week, and then on the 2 days off, I'd go shoot. So I mean, the first year was really tough, and then I had a lot of kind of crusty old English bosses that were like, you got to put your time in, mate. You got to put your time in. So it made it even harder. But in the end, I think it made me a better photographer. I don't know. Any questions? Yeah.
Do you get to mount a lot of your cameras and gear on like brackets or anything? Some of the pictures that you say, okay, I place the camera there, I need to shoot with the remote.
Yeah, it's like a super clamp. Like I think Bogan Monofroto makes these super clamps. Everyone uses them, and then you have to safety cable everything down, like the camera, the clamp, everything. So if one piece comes loose, it'll catch and it won't fall on someone. Pocket Wizard, yeah. In a case like this, I had the Pocket Wizard on my camera that I was shooting in hand because I'm shooting the action in front of me with my in-hand camera. So.
Thank you, Don. Thank you to all the photographers. Your pictures inspire and move us. And thank you for everybody for coming. I can turn it back over to Larry.
Well, thanks again. Let me thank again the Getty Images crowd. It's actually not just one. The LA Times, TNT, Canon. And thanks all of you for coming. Come again next year. And now invite you to a reception upstairs. And one more hand of applause for our panelists.